And I guess I'm glad to know I'm not the only one who's lost an hour every day this week. So we start off with a moment of silence, so please join me. And please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we have do a little roll call here. We don't usually, but have an odd group tonight. Brian DeLagrange, Valerie Lovelace, here. DJ Fazier, Joel King,
here.
Rob Pell,
Here.
Rick Riker,
Here.
Kurt Collins,
Here.
Vanessa O'Shea. All right, I have messages from Vanessa and Brian each that they're running a few minutes late, but I believe DJ Fazier is absent tonight as far as I know. We will get started with a proclamation from about the American Association of University Women. Whereas the American Association of University Women, AAUW, founded in 1881, is a leading voice in advancing gender equity in education and workplaces, with more than 170,000 members throughout the country. And whereas through research, education, and advocacy, AAUW is committed to ensuring everyone gets the same opportunity to learn and lead. And whereas education empowers women as individuals and as community to strengthen their economic status, provide healthier living conditions, and obtain recognition for their talents and skills. And whereas the Grants Pass branch of AAUW was chartered on March 25th, 1946, and for more than 75 years has improved the lives of women and girls in Grants Pass and Josephine County by annually awarding Rogue Community College scholarships to local women to support their educational goals with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math, initiating an endowment fund with Rogue Community College Foundation dedicated for local scholarships, hosting the Froggo Fair for 45 years in Riverside Park, an annual free event offering arts and crafts, hands-on science projects, and interactive activities for children and families, hosting the annual Southern Oregon Art Show for 61 years, entry open to all artists, co-hosting 11 years of Girls Rock events for local middle school girls to expand their interest in science, technology, engineering, and math subjects and careers. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sarah Bristol, Mayor of the City of Grants Pass, do hereby proclaim March 25th, 2022 as American Association of University Women Day, and extend congratulations to AAUW and encourage Grants Pass citizens to celebrate the Grants Pass branch for its many contributions to our community. And we have a few members of American Association of University Women here today, including our honorary lifetime members, Nancy Hitchcock and Gwen Jacobson, former educators, and I think they would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. The time flies so fast, you don't realize that you've been doing something for 50 years. And we work very hard to advocate for women and girls in our community, and particularly in higher education. And our scholarships to Rogue Community College are evidence of that. We've done that for a lot of years. We used to have a program called the Kitchen Tour to raise funds for those scholarships, but in recent times, people haven't wanted to have a lot of strangers tromping through their houses. So we've dropped that. We're having a garage sale in June, so you can come and help support scholarships that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks to you ladies for everything you do for the community. I have such good memories of the Frog Affair growing up, and Girls Rock has been a fun event to take my daughter to, and I really appreciate everything you do.
I just want to mention the Frog Affair has transitioned to another community group, and it will take place this year in June. So we'll still have it.
Terrific. And I'm going to come down and hand this to you, and we'll take a quick picture, and then we will pick up with our public hearing.
I mean, there's a point, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, when men are going to be the minority at the top and need affirmative action to get up there. White men, maybe. You know? Yeah, exactly. We'll need affirmative action.
One of the fun things about having this job in my hometown is that I get to see all my old teachers. Thanks, ladies.
Previous teachers.
All right, former teachers, not old. All right, next up, we have a public hearing. At this time, I will open the public hearing to consider an application to consider an ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 900 and 1,000 of map number 360530AA. We will begin the hearing with a staff report, followed by a presentation by the applicant, statements by persons in favor of the application, statements by persons in opposition to the application, and an opportunity for additional comments by the applicant and staff. After that has occurred, the public comment portion will be closed and the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to hear this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? Are there any councilors who wish to disclose discussions, contacts, or other ex parte information they have received prior to this meeting regarding the application? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria which are set forth in the Development Code. All testimony which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. If you would like a copy of the report, please write that on a note to the city manager, and one will be provided. It is important to remember if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. And the hearing will now proceed with a report from staff. Hi, Brad. I just wanted to note for the record, too, that Councilors Auger and De La Grange have arrived.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Bradley Clark, Community Development. As you mentioned, this is a property line vacation request, and it is located off of Harbeck and Grandview, fairly close to South Middle School. And what's shown on the right-hand side of the screen here is in the red. There's 2 parcels, as you can see. This is at that southeast corner of Harbeck and Grandview. There's 2 parcels, but there's one single development that's being proposed on that property. And the line that is highlighted there in the middle is the one that's the subject of tonight's meeting. What's being proposed there is a 56-unit affordable housing project that is being developed by Jackson County Housing Authority. This is an aerial of the property here on the left, highlighted in yellow. And then on the right is the site plan that has gone through the hearings officer. So our development code says if you're in the R3 zone and you want to do an apartment complex, you do that through the hearings officer. So Jackson County Housing Authority filed their application many months ago, and the condition of approval on that was that they would have to, get the line vacated. So they are still quite a ways away from development, and so we thought in terms of timing that would work. Just about in the middle, you can see where that line might be. There's a play area.
DJ Spazer
is now joining.
There's a play area and a community center and some parking, and this open space here is wetlands. So again, just kind of a blow up of the site map. This is the assessor's parcels as they are laid out there today. And the criterion for approval, you've seen these many times. The configuration cannot create a substandard condition if you remove the property line, and it can't be contrary to the health, safety, welfare, and convenience of Article 17, which is our partition and subdivision article. We did not receive any comments related to the property line vacation from the public, and the call to action is there. April 15th is the 120-day notice from the state that we have a deadline for, and then there's a recommended motion. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Brad. Council, are there any questions? Brian?
Thanks, Brad. I know this isn't a part of what we're approving today, but do you happen to know how many units that development's planned to be?
56.
56. Do you happen to know the approximate acreage of those two lots?
It's well, the total is about 3, so I think they're a little over 1.5 each.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? All right, is there an applicant to speak on this? No. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in opposition to the application? All right. The matter is now, we'll close the public hearing portion of this, and the matter is now before the council for your consideration. Rick.
I'd like to move to adopt the ordinance amending the Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 6.01020, Title and Definitions, 6.0 for 100, parking, excuse me, I'm on the wrong page.
Parking?
It's right up there. It's right up there, bottom.
Move to approve the ordinance vacating the property line between tax lots 900 and 1,000, the map number 360530AA, first reading.
Thank
Second.
you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. Kurt and Rob with the second there. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Rick, you made the motion to approve, to adopt the ordinance. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
DJ?
yes,
Motion passes 8-0. Julie, can you please read it?
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 900 and 1,000 of map number 36-05-30-AA.
Thank you. Valerie?
I move to adopt the ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 900 and 1,000 of map number 360530AA and have it read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Kurt with the second. Any discussion on this motion? All right, Valerie, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Julie, will you please read it?
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 900 and 1,000 of map number 36-05-30-AA.
Thank you. All right, next up on our agenda, council action item 2A is an ordinance amending the municipal code. Jason. We're going to talk about electric vehicles now, right?
We are, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I did want to note on your dais there is a new section of packet. We noticed when the packet was scanned, it grabbed every other page of the ordinance. I believe all the important parts were in the packet that was distributed to you, but we did want to get that back in front of you with all of the additional pages for your consideration. And also on one item, the wrong paragraph was highlighted. I believe it was on 6.05090. We accidentally highlighted 6.05080, but it wasn't the one referring to the electric vehicles. So those were the only changes that were there in the ordinance that was put in front of you. So with that, I have a very brief presentation for you on the ordinance, a little bit longer on the potential fee structure. The subject in summary is to consider an ordinance amending and creating definition of electric vehicle charging space, providing you with the ability to assess fees and fines, and setting up required signage for electric vehicle parking spaces. So a little background, through a grant from Pacific Power, the city has now installed 2 electric charging stations in downtown parking lots. The charging stations are now installed and they are ready to be placed into service. These are specialized parking spots. They have not previously been addressed in our municipal code, in that you have a parking spot now that is dedicated to an electric vehicle, but no definitions in the municipal code in the traffic section to really address that. Items that would need to be considered is how long you may park in the spot, if you are not charging, or if you're allowed to park in the spot if you're not in an electric vehicle, and also fines for using the space improperly. So the changes to the code are under section 6.01020, we added definition 15, which is simply the electric vehicle charging space, which means that a parking space designated for the exclusive purpose of charging an electric or hybrid vehicle. 6.04100, that is parking in an electric vehicle charging space. Section A was added, and that is that no person shall park in an electric vehicle charging space for more than 3 hours unless connected to and actively charging the vehicle. Additional violations occur for each and every 3-hour period. So the intent there was to treat it similarly to 3-hour parking in the downtown corridor. Section 6.05090, signs for electrical vehicle parking stations. This would be required signage at each of those locations, clearly identifying it as an electrical vehicle charging station reserved for EV parking only. Also citing the fine if not actively charging, and providing a warning and a phone number for using a device that is not completely up to snuff. Under section 6.07010, I am not going to read the whole thing. I have highlighted the text that actually has been inserted. This entire paragraph, 2 paragraphs, are identical to what is currently in the code. All we added was or 6.04100, parking in electrical vehicle parking spaces, and that gives the Public Safety Department the authority to cite somebody who is parked in those spaces and not using them. So those were very, very minor. It's just we had not addressed those in the traffic code. I expect the next discussion will be a little bit more complex. This is before you today, And I have a couple of alternatives there for you and would be glad to take your questions at this time.
Rick, go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. Would it be appropriate for me, I had some additional language, it would be appropriate for me to present that and say why
I would think that at this point we could add that language to, as long as it's made in the motion to the ordinance. I was looking for approval, but yes.
Okay, thank you. So can you go back to the second slide of 6.040-100?
Whoops.
Page 2, I think. 3, there it is.
Yep.
Okay, when I read that, I want, for me, to make it more explicit, I would wonder if we should consider what I rewrote in here, or what I have written here. No person shall park in the electric vehicle charging space unless connected and actively charging. The maximum time shall be 3 hours per day. Now, going to the original one that's there, the way I read it, if I'm going to be parked there more than 3 hours, I have to be actively charging. But I can park, the way I read that, I could be parked there for 7 hours. And personally, I don't think that's fair if we have 2 cars wanting to charge, that somebody could be sitting there for 7 hours. And then the other reason for being specific on the 3 hours per day is because a person could pull up and say, it's going to take me 7 hours to charge. And to me, as a public service, that charger is not to be occupied by one car for that period of time. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
And I would turn that to you folks for discussion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Jason? All right.
Okay.
We will turn it over to the public for comment. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to comment on this? No? Okay, we'll turn it back to the public for discussion, and or to the council for discussion, rather. Brian.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing as Rick. My language was a little different, but basically, you know, something to say where right now it's 3 hours unless you're connected, and then you can stay kind of as long as you want. But the intent with downtown chargers is to, you know, it's kind of like a public service almost. You know, while people are downtown, they can charge their car while they're at the restaurant or at, you know, shopping or whatever they're doing. But it's not, you know, we don't want them hogging the spaces. So I would just say something like 3 hours while they're connected and actively charging. You know, and then after 3 hours, it's just like any other parking space where they have to move. So essentially, basically the same as Rick said.
Okay, and then the council's intent is only to have electric vehicles parked in these spaces, right? So how about no person shall park in an electric vehicle charging space unless connected to and actively charging the vehicle, and then we could say like time limit 3 hours, 3 hours per day, 3 hours maximum. Does anybody have a? Yeah.
Yeah, before we curate this completely, I had another part that I wanted to add. I have an interest in actually adding a clause similar to page 14 that cites removal powers. You know, on the flip side of the coin, if there's only a couple of gas stations in town and an electric vehicle is parked in a stall, that could be pretty problematic for people. So something to the effect of vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with city municipal code at the owner's expense, preferably at the end of what you had just added, Mayor.
So that final sentence that's in section 605080?
Yeah, just above that. The one that I had written out is public electric vehicle charging stations must be reserved for parking and charging electric vehicles per person 3 hours each day. No person shall park or stand an electric vehicle in a designated electric vehicle charging station when not electrically charging. And then Vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with city municipal code at the owner's expense.
Okay. Trying to figure out how this is divided up here. Okay, so we have the motion all in one grouping. Okay, I'm going to suggest on section, on page 12 of this kind of new packet that I have, I don't know if you all have the same item here, but 6.04-100A, no person shall park in an electric vehicle charging space unless connected to and actively charging the vehicle, maximum 3 hours per day, period. Additional violations occur for each and every 3-hour period. The electric charging fee will be set by council resolution. Does that work? Okay. And then we have section, let's see, 6.0120. I guess that's just, I'm not even finding that, 6.01, that's just adding it. Well, I believe it's adding the definition, but I don't have that section in this part that I'm looking at. The reason why I'm mentioning it is because it's listed in the motion, the proposed motion. Does anybody have that 6.01.020? It is the definition, but I guess I just don't even see what we're changing, so I'd like to be able to, which page?
6.04.100.
Item 15, oh, you know what, I had a chunk fall out of mine, maybe that's in this missing chunk. It is, probably. No, it's not. Okay. Well, as long as you all are looking at it and you're okay with that definition, we'll just leave it as is, and then we'll move along to 6.05.090. And that is, oh, that's the one that's that was mislabeled, but that's the language for the sign, which right now is, the language is free public parking, closed to public parking Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. from March through November. That's due to the growers market.
Mayor?
Yep.
I'm sorry, it's the next one down. It's 6.05090.
Okay.
I apologize. That was in the original packet, they bolded the wrong one. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Too many packets here. Signs for electric vehicle parking spaces. So this says, electric vehicle charging station reserved for EV parking only. Vehicles will be cited per ordinance, the number, $25 fine if not actively charging. Do not use outlets which are damaged. Notify Grants Pass facilities for repair. And then Vanessa, are you suggesting that we also have that sentence you mentioned earlier on the sign itself?
I'm not certain if there's enough real estate for that, but just as long as it's in the ordinance, the municipal code, that we're the definition 6.04.100.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it would go, because would it go under fines and penalties?
What was the number again, Vanessa?
6.04.100, that first definition.
Okay, but where's the sentence that you wanted to add to that?
I understand. It's just above the 6.05.080. What is bolded, vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with city
Hey,
municipal
it's just
code.
above, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Rick.
I have a question on the new packet that was given to us tonight on section 6.05090, when it refers to the $25 fine if not actively charging. Jason, I thought also if an electric vehicle is in the space and not charging, it was like, what, 14 cents per minute? So how do you differentiate?
And that's a great question. I think that charge is going to be up for discussion a little bit later, Councilor Riker. Because if we're going to go just with that they're only allowed to be there for 3 hours, that other charge really may not be applicable. That 14 cents a minute, though, does work out to $25 for 3 hours, which would be the fine for being in the space for 3 hours. So that's how I came up with that number.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think I've got myself squared away here. Do you want me to go over the changes? Are you making the motion? All right, so here's what I have right now. That in section 6.01020, we would leave the definition as provided in the packet. In section 6.04100, we would change it to say, no person shall park in an electric vehicle charging space unless connected to and actively charging the vehicle, maximum 3 hours per day. Additional violations occur for each and every 3-hour period. The electric charging fee will be set by council resolution. And then in section 6.05090, we would have it as stated here in this new packet, except Vanessa has suggested moving, adding another sentence that says, vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with city municipal code at the owner's expense. All right. And I think we have not yet dealt with 6.7010. We will be dealing with that separately. Brian.
So I think that all sounds pretty good. I have a suggestion on the sign piece, so we don't have a novel on this sign, just to kind of trim it up a little. Vanessa's language and the language that talks about a $25 fine if not actively charging is redundant. So I don't know if we could strike the line that's here and just move forward with that language since it addresses both. Mm-hmm. And then below that where it says do not use outlets which are damaged and then et cetera, that line that says do not use outlets which are damaged, I mean, I think that's unnecessary. I mean, if it just says notify Grants Pass facilities for repair and has the phone number, that's adequate. I don't think we need to, inform people that if they're damaged, not to use them on the sign.
You can't use it.
Seems a bit much.
Okay. Is there a reason, Jason, that you know of that would be necessary to have that line?
It's one additional line. I don't think it will hurt the sign. I would rather make it very, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I would rather we explicitly say do not use if it's damaged, just so that somebody couldn't use it even though they knew it was damaged and then say, well, you didn't tell me I couldn't use it when it was damaged. I know that that's a horrible thing to say, but I think it is a little layer of protection for the city that should be on the sign.
All right, well, that makes some sense. Theoretically, city staff will put up 2 signs if they need a little extra space, right? They can figure that one out. Valerie?
Yeah, I just want clarification on the sign. Are we taking off the no long-term parking? So we're just putting vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with city municipal code at the owner's expense. Am I correct?
So the no long-term parking,
That doesn't need to be there. I mean, you'll just be taking vehicles found to be in violation will be subject to citation and tow in accordance with the city municipal code at the owner's expense. So that's, yeah. Okay.
I think yes, because the other part,
Goes with
I
the
mean, I
figure.
guess somehow there also needs to be a sign that indicates the part about the 3-hour maximum, right? Like everything that's in this section 6.04-100 needs to be on the sign. Vanessa?
It could be amended to say reserved for EV parking 3 hours per day.
That's good.
Okay.
To that effect.
EV parking only 3 hours per day?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, just if I'm understanding council correctly, you're wanting to put the towing provision into this sign. You're wanting to make it clear that it's for parking and for charging only, okay? May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
So what I would suggest would be doing electric vehicle, charging plus parking station, deleting the second line that says reserved for EV parking only, and then moving vehicles found to be in violation will be towed just before, or just after, my apologies, the $25 fine provision. So you're taking out one line and you're adding one line.
So you're suggesting taking out the reserve for EV parking only?
Yes, and then putting electric vehicle charging plus parking station in the first line.
And you feel that adequately communicates that other vehicles can't park there?
Electric vehicle parking and charging only. I do.
Well, it would no longer say only.
But it would be electric vehicle charging station. You could put only at the end of that first sentence.
I mean, and we were adding, while you were talking over there, you may not have heard, we feel that you need to add 3-hour parking, 3 hours per day to the sign, because the other section we were discussing is the ordinance, the city code, but it's not actually on the sign, so we need to add that to the sign.
Okay, just a quick suggestion.
Okay. Council, what do you think? Do you like this idea of Brian?
So when I see electric vehicle charging signs in other communities, they're pretty simple. They are not like this. They just say electric vehicle charging only, 3 hours maximum, and then maybe at the bottom it'll cite the ordinance or something, but this seems like a lot to put on a sign, just based on what I've seen in other communities for this type of signage. So I don't mean to undermine the work that we've done on this sign so far, but it just seems like a lot.
No, I agree. How about electric vehicle charging only, 3 hours per day? So that's kind of merging the top two lines that we have here. Vehicles will be cited per, listing the ordinance. $25 fine if not actively charging. Vehicles subject to tow or something. Vehicles in violation subject to tow, something like that. Okay, let me write that down real quick. So the do not use outlets which are damaged is a kind of a cover your tush sort of line. Notify grants past facilities for repair. Okay, I'm going to read it all again. Electric vehicle charging only, 3 hours per day. Vehicles will be cited per ordinance. $25 fine if not actively charging.
3 hour.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, if a electric vehicle is there charging for 2 hours and not the third, I mean, really, it's just they can park there for 3 hours. Does that matter? I don't have an EV, so. Is that too much info as to have the if not actively charging?
With my car, if I'm pulling into a supercharger and the car is finished the charging cycle, if you're there more than 1 minute past the completion of your charge, you're charged $1 a minute. So it encourages you to move your car so other people can use it. So I think it would be appropriate. In fact, we were up in Portland recently. Somebody was parked in the parking space and they weren't even charging, and yet there was no violation. So I think it's appropriate if we can have the language in there to keep the turnover, maintain the turnover.
Okay. $25 fine if not actively charging. Vehicles found to be in violation subject to tow. Do not use outlets which are damaged. Notify grants past facilities for repair at 541-450-6000. Seem okay? Any further comments on that? All right. Somebody want to make a motion to approve all that? Vanessa?
I so move as stated.
Succinct, nice. Second from Valerie, thank you. All right, any discussion on this? All right, Vanessa, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes to whatever.
Joel?
Yes.
Do you need me to repeat it all for you, Kurt? Okay. DJ?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, part 2.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is actually an ordinance, and so we do need to read title only and have
Okay,
a second
thank
reading.
you.
I apologize.
Go ahead, Julie, please.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass, amending Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 6.01.020, Title and Definitions, 6.04.100, Parking in an Electric Vehicle Charging Space, 6.05.090, Signs for Electric Vehicle Charging, and 6.07.010, Civil Penalty as amended.
Yeah, Valerie.
I would like to make a motion approving the ordinance amending Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 6.01.020, Title and Definitions, 6.04.100, Parking in an Electric Vehicle Charging Space, 6.05.090, Signs for Electrical Vehicle Charging, and 6.07.010, Civil Penalty, as amended as for second reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Rick, thank you. Any discussion? All right, Valerie, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Let's hear that second reading.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass amending Grants Pass Municipal Code Chapter 6.01.020, Title and Definitions, 6.04.100, Parking in an Electric Vehicle Charging Space, 6.05.090, Signs for Electric Vehicle Charging, and 6.07.010, Civil Penalty as amended.
Thank you. And Jason, can we just continue right now with section C regarding the fee schedule, and then we'll jump back to the Caveman pool?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, very much so. So this subject in summary is to consider a resolution amending the comprehensive fee schedule, which would add electric vehicle charging fees and fines to the schedule. So through the grant, again, from Pacific Power, we have now installed the chargers. We have passed an ordinance which recognizes them in our code, and we're ready to place those in service. However, when we went to look at these, there is a wide range of fees charged for these chargers up and down the I-5 corridor, so we wanted to get some direction from you on what we should be charging. Each dual head charger has cost us $14,433 to purchase and install. There were a few additional charges from electricians and permitting and some others, but we've absorbed those costs. Basically, the chargers each were $6,218. Installation was $7,073.60. The pedestals were $530, and training and support was $325. It is not known how long these chargers will last, but the grant period does specify that the city must maintain the chargers for 10 years. We are recommending that we collect enough revenue to replace them at about the 7-year mark, just to be safe, to make sure that we have the ability. The grant terms did specify that if these were taken out of service prior to the 10-year mark, we would be liable for the prorated expense. So that if they died at 7 years, we would take the $14,000, which is about $1,400 a year, and we'd have to pay 3 years of that $1,400 back to Pacific Power. So the other cost that we have is that each charging station, we had to upgrade the electrical services. In the example of the duck lot, we had to install an entirely new power service. At the Welcome Center, we had to do a pretty significant upgrade to the electrical service, which added $50.20 per month to the bill for the next 5 years. The electrical service at the duck lot has a base fee of $69 per month for the next 5 years, similarly for repaying the cost of installing that service. Both sites are assessed a fee of approximately 10 cents per kilowatt consumed. So what that means, and I put this chart, you can probably see it better on your printout. The blue lines actually represent the cost per hour to run the chargers per head. The red line that crosses it, and on the right-hand side of the chart, is your cost per month given a certain amount of usage on that unit. So if we were only to get 3 hours of usage per day, that would equal roughly $200 per month electrical fee. If they were to get about 10 hours per day, it would cost us roughly just under $20, but the monthly fee would be closer to $600 per month. And that's just what I wanted to share with you. As the usage goes up, that cost goes up pretty dramatically because they do consume quite a bit of power. So what does that actually mean? A single head charging about 2 hours per day will cost the city about $3.94 per day, which is about $184 a month once you add in all of the static fees. The cost to the city will be, at the Welcome Center, will be slightly less. This is using the duck lot, and that is because of two reasons. One is the fee to upgrade that service was lower. In addition, the Welcome Center power it's not able to deliver the same level of power. It will be a slower charge at the Welcome Center than at the duck lot. We just could not get enough power to the building to facilitate the higher level charge. We will be working on that in the future, but for now it's going to be less. Blink, which is our vendor, currently typically charges their customers about 39 cents per kilowatt. When the customer is a member of their network, they charge 49 cents per kilowatt for non-members. They also charge an 8% transaction fee. We are not proposing fees anywhere in this neighborhood. I think that they're just too high, and we can actually cover our cost and repay those at a much lower rate. So we can choose to set the fee at any desired level or not at all. I am proposing at this time that we look at a rate of about 20 cents per kilowatt. At that rate, we would probably earn enough money to replace that unit after that 7 years. Darn it, it's cutting off the bottom of that slide. And on the printout, you can see it more clearly, the numbers at the bottom. I apologize, but on the screen right here, I don't see the bottom numbers.
It says potential revenue, $460.80.
Thank you. And you can see that for us to break even, we actually need to be at that $471, but I think that it'll balance out in the long run, because some days you'll charge more than 2 hours, some days you'll charge less. We're hoping for a little more utilization. In calling around, we did talk to the city of Roseburg today. They also have a similar grant with Pacific Power. They voiced a little bit of frustration over their units. They are at 7% utilization. It is Roseburg, which is a little different. They may not have a lot of electric vehicles, so 7% is an hour 30 per day. So we're estimating high compared to Roseburg. They also have seen extensive vandalism. They pay over $1,500 a year for the last couple of years in vandalism, repairing vandalism to the machines. So they recommended well-lit parking lots, which we've got that checked, and also a lot of people around, which we also do. These are not very remote parking lots. They're right in our downtown corridor, so hopefully we don't experience that. So the other potential fee that we have included in the draft resolution is a fee to charge for a vehicle who has finished charging and not returned to remove their car from the electrical vehicle charging station. This one you may want to consider eliminating based on that you did just limit the space to 3 hours maximum. But the intent of this was exactly what you were trying to do, so that if a vehicle came in and they only needed to charge for an hour, we suggest using a 15-minute delay, not 1 minute as Tesla does, and then start charging them at a rate of about 14 cents per minute, which roughly equals out to the $25 fine that we would charge for a vehicle being in the space improperly. So that's just there for your consideration. Right now it is included that if they were done charging after a 15-minute delay, we would start charging them 14 cents a minute for being connected and not charging. And that last slide did include that the $25 fee also includes non-electric vehicles parking in that spot illegally. And we do tentatively have that call to action today, but can be deferred. I do have a lot of alternatives there. We can adopt the resolution with the rates as presented. You can change those rates, you can eliminate those rates, or not adopt this resolution at all. So I'm here for any questions that you have.
Thanks, Jason. Council, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
About the $25 fee. If we were to charge for parking at the station, is the late payment charged automatically, or is that up to a parking patrol person to give that fine?
So if we left the 14 cents per minute charge in the resolution, if the person charged and they're done charging, we would start assessing that fee. Otherwise, it's going to rely on a parking patrol person to pick up that that person is in there longer than the 3 hours to be able to assess it. So the 14 cents a minute definitely will encourage them to move along. But you want to build in a nice buffer so that they have a few minutes after it's done charging to, finish eating or whatever it is that they're downtown doing.
Sure. All right, any other questions, council? Valerie, then Brian.
I guess I'm just looking at the charging rates. You don't have that up there. We have it in our...
I don't.
Okay.
I do at the very back of the presentation. They were so small, I didn't think that they were going to show well on TV, so I wanted to put them in the back of your presentation. Okay. And what we did was we did a survey online, and we picked up all of the chargers that we could find, I believe from Ashland to Roseburg, which is quite a few. And as you can see, they are all over the board, from $7.50 a charge to 10 cents per minute, to a lot of free units that are located all over. The T ones, the ones that are marked with a T, those are Tesla units. We could not find published prices for Tesla units anywhere.
Okay.
And then the rest going down, there are some that are for guests only, especially where they're associated with businesses. So you found a lot of free ones associated with businesses, and then parking lots. And we had inquiries out to several agencies that are paying for them. Roseburg pays for theirs out of their general fund.
Okay.
Ashland has not gotten back to us yet on where they're paying for their free ones that are in their parking lots.
Okay, and so I was just clarifying that some of them actually pay per session, some of them are paid per hour, so they're all over the place, basically.
They are. There is not a standard method for charging. It is all over the place.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, then Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. At the beginning, you were talking about the costs, the installation costs, and I just wasn't clear how much of those costs were covered by the grant that we got from Pacific Power.
So the grant was covered 100% of those costs. So we are not out of pocket. If we have to replace a unit, these are the costs that we will see to replace that unit. And so that was the dollars that I was trying to recover.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Rick.
I'll save my comments for discussion later.
Okay.
Thank
Wasn't a question, thank you. Okay, any other questions for Jason at the moment?
Thank you.
You're off the hook. Thanks, Jason. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this? Nope. All right, we'll turn it back to council for discussion. You want to get us started, Rick?
So Jason, you were asking what some of the other stations charge. We recently, last week, were up at Myrtle Creek, and we were paying 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But the thing is, this varies between, sometimes they run specials. Myrtle Creek is a new location, so they may have a discounted rate right now. We've had lesser off hours, like after 10 o'clock at night, you can have special low rates. But with all that input, I think our 20 cents would be reasonable. Thank you.
Brian.
So we have 3 electric vehicle driving counselors up here, so that's good. 2 of them drive Teslas, and 1 of them does not. But it's a little bit different. When you have a Tesla, you have special chargers, and it's kind of like you're in the Tesla club. So it's like a different thing than like every other electric vehicle. So I'm going to kind of provide the every other electric vehicle perspective. When I'm using my electric vehicle, I'm inclined to go to the free charger. I almost never use a pay charger because there's free chargers in just about every town. People are less inclined to use the chargers if they're not free. So I think part of the intent from the grant from Pacific Power is to see that the chargers get use. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given us $50,000. Like, they want them to be used. And they will see more use if they don't have a charge, if they're complimentary. And so I did, I looked at the numbers that Jason has here, and it looks like, if his estimates are correct, 2 hours a day per the 4 chargers that we have, it looks like it's maybe in the neighborhood of like $8,000 a year of electricity cost, which over the course of a year is not a ton. And I would argue that the type of people that use electric cars that are going to be going downtown and plugging their car in, they're going to be spending money downtown. So the more we can encourage electric vehicle drivers to go downtown and spend time downtown and spend money in our downtown, I think the benefit is far greater than the $8,000 in fees that we would get from charging people to use the charging stations. So I would just throw out there that I personally don't think that we need to charge a fee for those. I think that we could cover the costs out of the downtown services budget or some other part of the budget. Thanks.
Rick.
Brian, in response to your comments, I can see your perspective for attracting people downtown. I think that would be a real advantage. In some respects, I don't mind if we want to pick up the tab for the electric bill, but I'm a little bit concerned in 7 or 10 years if we go to replace this charger, what we'll be looking at then. So do we want to have any money coming in to help towards that in the future? That would be my question. Thank you.
Joel.
I don't know if this happens at the free sites, but geez, if I had an electric car and there was a free charging station and I lived in town, I'd be down there every night at 9 o'clock to midnight and I'd charge my car. Because I essentially would have no investment in electricity to run my car, and I could run it for free except for the depreciation. So that would be a little concerning that if you did that during the day, it might detract away from downtown because that would be taken up by somebody getting free electricity. Not just a thought.
Would you walk home?
I'm saving money, yeah, I could walk home.
Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought of that, and I would just say that if someone wants to sit down in their car for 3 hours to get $2.50 of free electricity, I don't see that scenario coming up very often. I feel like that would be a huge time sink for somebody just to get a couple bucks a charge. So, but it's a valid comment.
Any further discussion? Vanessa?
Yeah, I support Councilor De La Grange and what he's saying. Just by basing it off of the charts that were provided, it looks like all of this, the common theme with city-owned infrastructure is that it is free. It's typically when it's at a private for-profit, like Walgreens or Walmart, Mercedes-Benz, these types of things. That's where we're seeing fees charged. But it looks like in the publicly owned places, they are pretty typically free. So I support that as well.
Valerie?
Well, I guess I've become, in my years of being on council, I have started to realize the significance of replacement costs down the road, which is something that in the past we haven't done in a lot of things, just turf and a lot of things, and suddenly we get stuck with a bill. So I personally think that we should recoup our costs. Like I said, I'm assuming we have a 3, our level 3, as opposed to a level 2, which means it's a super. Ours is a 2? Oh, okay, that makes a difference too. Anyway, I don't know as much about them as you guys do. I mean, I got an electric bike, that was a start, but I haven't moved on to an electric car yet. So, but I see Walmart, and a lot of places are. Anyway, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys, but I do like the idea of recouping costs. I don't want to make a killing, but I do think that we do have to understand that down the road we will have to replace them. And as we know, tight budgets are real.
Rick, then Joel, then Brian.
So if you go to page 21 and it talks about these free chargers, a lot of the free chargers are a level 2. You can only put on about 20 miles an hour on your battery, where the level 3, within 20 minutes, I can put 110 miles on. So there's a major difference. And what I'm looking at here, all these, oh, it indicates level 2 also on here. Jason, ours is level 3?
No.
2. Okay. So that makes a difference. So you're not getting a lot of miles very fast. And for that reason, it may be we want to seriously look at the free side of it. Thank you.
So for those of us who are gas guzzling people, a level 1 works slow. Okay. And as you go up in the levels, you would be using more power. Thank you. Joel, then Brian.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about, if you use gas, you have a gas tax that builds the infrastructure on which you drive your car. And right now, if you have an electric car, you don't support the infrastructure at all, which is good for the electric car owner, and that's an incentive also. So it wouldn't bother me to charge a fee, being as, and it's only for replacement, but the infrastructure is is being subsidized by the gasoline taxes, and they're really not paying their fair share.
Vanessa?
Just to clarify, electric vehicles do pay for infrastructure through their registration. Although it's not paid at the gas pump, it's paid when they register their vehicle.
So how much is it a year?
It is dependent on if the vehicle's brand new or if it's used, but it's really dependent. It tiers, so I can't say it might be different for a Nissan than it would be for a luxury vehicle, so I'm not really sure. Can't give you, yeah.
Brian?
So just to address that point, electric vehicle registration fees and renewal fees are significantly higher than gas vehicle registration and renewal fees to cover exactly what you just described. So we do pay for that. And then also I was looking at the replacement costs in here on slide 12, or actually these are the initial costs, but some of them would be applicable to replacement. Specifically chargers and installation. And without having the documentation here, that number for the chargers seems really high. When I had a level 2 charger installed at my house, the equipment was about $500, and it was just as robust as the other free chargers that I've seen municipalities use. So that's seems high. We don't need to get into that, but I'm just thinking that's a big number. And then the installation number of $7,360, when we go to replace those chargers, a lot of that installation cost I think is going to be less because we're essentially just swapping out the board. We're just taking off the charger and putting on the new charger. So I think a lot of those installation costs may have been related to initial installation. So my point is that I don't think that replacement cost when it gets to that point is going to be very significant. I think it's going to be in the neighborhood of, a handful of thousands of dollars and not going to be a huge concern like replacement for other types of things municipalities might need to plan for.
Okay, well, assuming those costs are correct, we're looking at about $14,000 to $15,000 10 years from now. I think Brian's proposal, yep.
So, Jason, can you address Brian's last statement? It would seem as though roughly half of the cost were a potentially one-time expense, right?
Potentially. I would really be hesitant if we change out chargers in the future. They may not have the same support. They may take different pedestals. I just can't speak to that. Ideally, they would mount on the same pedestal and you would have the same issues. I think that these are $6,200. There's a lot more hardware inside, including cellular telephones and a lot to that. I think the cost would be lower if we could use the same pedestals, but I can't guarantee that because in 7 years, The chargers may all be totally different.
The pedestal was really a very small cost, though.
Correct,
Right? It was
but
more
if
the,
we
it's
have
more
to
the
change.
electrical work, right?
No,
The pedestal was
this is
$570 or something, right?
The electrical work was not included in that $7,000. That was the charge for the vendor to come down, get everything connected, get it adopted to the network, to make sure that everything's functional. That was all part of the setting up the pedestals correctly, mounting the pedestals to concrete bases, all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian?
So I haven't been involved in this whole process of how the city went about procuring chargers and installing them, but it sounds like the chargers that we got have a lot of features related to cellular connectivity and the ability to charge fees and all these other things that they may or may not needed to have if we decided not to charge a fee. If we decided to not charge a fee, we could have used more off-the-shelf standard chargers that are significantly less cost. The ones in the free parking lot in City of Ashland, you just pull up and you just plug it in. There's no nothing. And those chargers are less cost. So we kind of, I don't want to say we shoehorned ourselves into needing to charge a fee by getting these more expensive chargers, but it sure makes us maybe need to recoup the costs now, whereas if we went with the basic no bells and whistles chargers, it may not have been an issue.
Jason?
A condition of the grant was actually that PP&L had to have access to them to be able to download data from them from their office. So there is a certain amount of requirements that we did have to upgrade to.
All right, thank you.
And we didn't pay out of pocket for these particular units, right? So any costs that were, any charge that we make is for a future machine, which could be something simpler, or it could be a replacement of the same. Okay. I think we're kind of getting lost in the details here, really. I would be willing to entertain a motion. We have two different ideas on the table. One is that we charge a fee, suggested at 20 cents. To help build up a savings account to recoup, to save up for future replacement of these machines. And the other idea is to do free of charge charging in order to encourage tourism and downtown use of the downtown. So let's not get too lost in the weeds here. Rob?
So I'd like to kind of propose a middle ground there. For a different reason, I went around downtown yesterday and talked to about 8 different merchants on a different issue, and it was great to get their feedback and their perspective. I would like to see free for, let's say, 2 years, and I'd like to talk to merchants and get a feel for whether or not they think it's, if they're noticing that it's really good for business. And we can come back in 2 years and potentially start charging if we want to. But that way we would kick the program off. We would essentially subsidize it for 2 years, try to get it going, and get a sense of what our merchants and tourism committee and people like that think about it later on. So I'd like to go 2 years free, and then we'd reevaluate.
Valerie, did you have your hand up?
Well, I was also considering the fact that if we're going to put more chargers in, if indeed we're moving towards more electrification, by charging something that gives us that money also to, plan for the future, because we won't continue to get, I'm sure, grants from PP&L over and over again. So I don't know. I'll throw it out there.
Brian?
I would move to accept Rob's idea and make a motion to not charge a fee for the first 2 years, and in 2 years reevaluate the fee structure.
Are you seconding or you have a comment? That was a motion. Brian just made the motion. Okay, Rick is seconding. Okay, do you have any discussion on this? Go ahead, Rick.
I think, as Rob and Brian said, I think that would be a good direction to go. you notice a lot of the chargers that are in town right now are not being used other than the Tesla chargers. But I think this would help promote the downtown. It would give us a gauge of how well the chargers are being used. The one thing we have to make sure, though, because they are free, that the people stick to the 3-hour limit. And they just don't use it as a free parking space. So, as long as we have that in there, I think it can work. Thank you.
Rob?
And just to clarify a little bit, when I was around town yesterday speaking with merchants, I had some questions, and one particular merchant said, yeah, every week this exact scenario comes up. And someone else said, oh yeah, you know, I got really good feedback because even though I'm downtown, I didn't necessarily have firsthand knowledge the way they did on some of the issues that I was asking about. So I think that doing a survey, and we could do, you know, an official survey of all the merchants in 2 years. But if we get the kind of, you know, feedback from them that it's really, really valuable, then we really know that, you know, we're going about the right way. But we also might get a sense, as you know, at that time, if we want to have more funding for other places in town, and there may be other grants available at that time. But I think to get feedback and to get a sense of how it's working and feedback, I think the way to go is definitely two years for free and then reevaluate.
Any further discussion on this? Joel?
Well, I just looked up, and actually, high mileage vehicles, they get a high miles per gallon, also pay a higher registration fee in the state of Oregon. And it's anywhere from $18 to $110 more per year. I don't know how much we pay in gas tax. The other thing that I was thinking of was, it's raised in my conscience level, you know, I would be okay with giving it free, but the general fund. It's easy for us the general fund is being squeezed, and so that's part of a consideration that I want to bring up to the discussion on anything that's going to affect general fund. Now, this isn't a whole lot of money. $60,000 for the Caveman pool isn't a whole lot of money. That's general fund. So I just want to bring that up. I'm not saying that shouldn't be in the way of it being free, but I'll bring that up on every subject and what is the impact on the general fund.
Kurt?
So does the charging station have a log of usage? And we have access to that? Okay, cool.
For the record, Jason is nodding his head yes.
It does, and if I could get a clarification, when we're saying no charging, is that also no charge, the 14 cents penalty for being connected after the time limit? And if we're going to adopt both of those at 0, can we please specify that the fine stays at $25 for parking in it illegally? That would be my only request moving forward.
I think we did just enact a $25 fee in the last ordinance, correct?
You need to take action on the resolution tonight because that $25 fee is actually specified via resolution. So it's as part of this adoption. It's in the comprehensive fee schedule. There's 3 items that are really close together. One is the kilowatt hour, one is the penalty for staying attached and not charging, and the other is the $25 fine for parking illegally in the spot.
Okay, so looking in, back to my original packet here. We have highlighted, is it highlighted where these changes are in the comprehensive fee schedule?
I believe it was. Yes, it is. Hang on one second. Page. I'm having a hard time reading that page number.
Yeah.
14 of 20. 14.
I believe it's
Yes,
114.
page 114,
Thank
14
you.
of 20. Okay, so if we were to make it no charge per hour, you would still like us to affirm that there's a $25
Yes.
fine?
Yep.
Okay,
And we can just put zeros in both of those, which gives you the opportunity to pass another resolution at a rate at a later date.
okay. Rob?
So I have a question for, I guess, probably Jason. So if we're charging per minute or per kilowatt hour, if we're charging, someone has to put a credit card in, that way if they're there more than 15 minutes beyond their fill-up time, they automatically pay a penalty. So if we made it free, is there any way for them to automatically pay a penalty?
I believe so, because I think their interface will still be through the Blink site. They just won't be charged a fee for charging, but they would be assessed a penalty. I can verify that and get back to you through Aaron with a council memo. But if that is your desire, we can leave the 14 cents in, and I'll let you know right away that it can or can't be applied. I believe it can.
Because I think that's really important, because until we have a log of use, after a year we'll know if people are hanging out there for hours past their recharge time. But I think it's pretty critical to know if people are on the honor system, so to speak, are they actually being good citizens or are they being rude? So I'd like to know the answer to that before I would, decide whether or not I think it should be free. It's just because I wouldn't want people to monopolize the spot. But we don't know that tonight, is what we're saying.
I believe you can. If what we're going to say is that they're going to still interface through the software and then we'll give them the charging for free, I think that the 14 cents can still apply. I just can't answer that exact question because it is in the software, but I can get that answer tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And I just also feel the need to add one other thing. Just so Joel doesn't pick on anybody, or Valerie especially. Valerie paid an extra fee when she got her electric bike. I believe it's an extra $10 fee that also goes, if I'm not mistaken, to the infrastructure. So even bikes are charged, Joel. Okay.
Joel?
This has taken, from my perspective, too long because it's a pretty simple decision, and I'm okay with not charging. The fees at the state level just for interest covers 8,100 miles of gasoline tax. So you pay the equivalent of going 8,000 miles a year. At the highest rate of your registration. So it's a pretty good deal.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, we went so long I almost forgot what I was going to say, but we also have a new parking enforcement officer too. And since those are city spaces, I would assume that the parking enforcement would be, keeping an eye on those just like they're keeping an eye on every other parking space in the city. So that's kind of an extra layer of enforcement there. And then the other thing, just, before we get to the vote, I just had the question about, this is going to, if we vote yes for this, it will be an additional cost that we have not decided where it's going to come from. So I don't know, and it is a small cost, but I don't know if it would come from general fund or downtown services. It seems like a downtown services thing.
Tourism? Maybe?
I don't know if we need to decide that before we vote on the motion or not, but
Maybe tourism.
Both of those are general fund. It's a general fund. It will be coming from general fund.
all right, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? I was going to ask Julie. I've lost track of what the motion was. Do you have something written down? I was going to ask Brian. That's fine. I'll ask Brian to repeat it.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution to amend the comprehensive fee schedule with the adjustment of, on page 114, not having the charge per kilowatt hour rate in there, just having that set as 0, with a revisiting in 2 years.
So no charge per kilowatt hour, but still the 14 cent per minute late as well as the $25 fee?
Correct.
Okay. And Rick, are you still seconding? Thank you. All right. Dare I ask, any discussion on this? All right. Brian, was your motion? How do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
DJ?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We're going to hop back to item B, which is a resolution regarding contract for a painting company regarding Caveman Pool.
Okay. There we go. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, as you well know, the Humpty Dumpty fell down and is slowly kind of being put back together in pieces, but is still kind of cracked, that Humpty Dumpty being Caveman Pool. Tonight we're making an assumption. I wanted to state that before we got into this, that the council's desire is to see Caveman Pool open for the 2022 season. We have not had that conversation formally with the council, but even during COVID, that has been the goal. Other than 2020, it was closed entirely. But I did want to put that out there at the beginning. That is an assumption that we made. And there are a couple of other items that the YMCA, our operator, has also asked for. They are smaller items and they fall well within the cap of either the city manager or director in terms of procurement.
Mark Seligman.
But
Is now joining.
this particular item exceeds the amount. So that's why we're here tonight, to talk about this particular project for Caveman Pool. So this is a resolution to approve a contract with the Oregon Painting Company, LLC, and this would to paint the basin as well as an 8-foot wide strip of decking around the edge of the pool to prepare for this season. And the relationship to your council goals, there's really two main ones: enhance community safety and maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet community needs. Just run quickly through some of these. Our annual pool attendance runs approximately 18,000. There's more detail in the memo that we have coming to you, and I know Councilor De La Grange had asked for that. We have that memo mostly done. It'll give you more details on the fees that have been collected as well as the specific numbers of attendance. But prior to COVID, 18,000 has been approximately. Last year there was about 6,500 users at the pool. It was closed entirely in 2020. That's some of what is triggering the need for this tonight, because the pool was not filled in the 2020 season. It was left open, as well as no covers, so that did cause some sunlight damage and kind of enhanced the situation that we're dealing with. So in anticipation of council's desire to open this year, we have had a few discussions with the YMCA, who operates not only the lifeguards, but they also handle tracking all the attendance. They deal with the concessions. They have janitorial staff that kind of work and keep the locker rooms clean and things like that. So they had pointed out several things in this painting and the chipping and the flaking that has been happening with the pool, and the deterioration is one of those topics that came up in our discussion. It has worsened since we had the pool closed in 2020. Some of those loose chips are floating even from time to time, need to be cleaned out at greater frequency. In addition to what we've just had observationally, we had a report done in 2019 by Gary Grip of Pure Water Aquatics, a commercial aquatics consultant, and he did list pool sealants and paint as a pressing need at that point as well. So we reached out to 7 different contractors. It's not a popular job. We did not hear back from 6 of those contractors, but we did get a quote from the Oregon Painting Company, and their bid is $55,000. Here's the pool in a couple of different settings there from a couple of years ago. You can see a little bit of that deterioration there in these photos. The $55,000, as I mentioned, is the entire basin of the pool, as well as that 8-foot wide strip of decking around the edge there. If you did not do the decking piece, that would reduce the cost by about $13,000. You know, it's one of those deals where YMCA feels like it's really is needed, but it's not like they're not going to enter into a contract with the city if it's not done. So the resource that we're using is LB 6189, which is our primary Parks and Rec kind of deferred maintenance account. I did include there some ARPA funding, could be allocated. I know you're still in discussions about how that money's going to be spent, but we do think that if you wanted some of that, could be reimbursed and help pay for this. So we've got a call to action date of today, primarily because of the contract and the bid and how long that bid is active for. So we'd like to be able to get that, or get on their list and be able to get it done if we're going to do it this year. So open for any questions.
Thank you, Brad. Are there any questions? Brian.
Thanks, Brad. You mentioned the Y had some other requests for funding for the year. Can you outline what those are?
Sure. A couple of them have actually already taken place. One is the ADA lift, which is just kind of loose and dangling out there. It spins 360 degrees. It's really more of a hazard to have it out there. So it may have already been removed, but that was one of them. Updating the chlorinator was another request. We are in the process of completing that. That's just something that staff can do. The muriatic acid, which is one of the chemicals that's necessary to operate the pool, has been stored very close in the storage room and does not meet the separation requirements. So that's another thing. We've actually already done that to a different storage room. The pool ladders, they're kind of falling apart. Again, something that I think we can shore up, and that's my Humpty Dumpty comment. I mean, there's things that we can just kind of secure in place and fix. Deck drains are clogged, and those need to be cleared. And then the pool covers is probably the most significant one. They're very deteriorated. If you look at some pictures that were presented, I think maybe during the Caveman pool committee task force, it's exposed in many corners of there because of the deterioration of the pool covers, which are very important in terms of the heat and maintaining the right temperature in the pool. So those would be something that if we're just going 1 year, that might work. But this raises the whole question, that's currently being discussed about the length of time that the pool would be operated in its current position as compared to either partnering with the YMCA or completely removing it where it's at and rebuilding. And if we're talking about another 2 to 3 years, these are things that the YMCA felt we could, if we could spend this $55,000 and then maybe another few thousand to get these improvements done, they would continue to contract with us.
Okay. So specifically regarding the painting piece, is there any health and safety or liability risk involved if we do not do that? Or is it more just upkeep and maintenance that is being recommended?
To my knowledge, there's not, because, you know, as its chips are found, flakes are found, I mean, they can be taken out. I mean, you know, during the season. I mean, if they pull the pool covers off and some of those can be removed. But I don't believe that you know, that question's been asked. I mean, I think if it sits there for a while, maybe there was going to be some problems. But it's very important to them. But I wouldn't say that it's rising to that level of you know, health and safety, like the muriatic acid piece. That if you don't fix this, we're not going to provide the lifeguard services.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Valerie, did you still have a question?
Yeah, I guess my question was basically, I was just curious if you heard from any of the other six as to whether there was a reason that they didn't particularly want to make a bid, if you had any discussion with them.
So I believe 3 of those, there was no response. The other 3, I know at least one of them, according to Chad, the issue was, you know, that just staffing, and it's a fairly big job, and just didn't have the ability to dedicate that much of their employee time to do this job at this time, because, you know, we're in this fairly short window.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
DJ, then Rick, then Joel.
My first thought about this expenditure is related to urban renewal dollars, in that we have more or less stated that we're going to be rebuilding the pool in its current location. I understand that we haven't encapsulated that area into the urban renewal district. My question would be broad, but basically understood by asking if there's an opportunity to borrow against urban renewal in the event that we do encapsulate that area into the district, so we could cover these costs with those dollars.
Right. Well, and until the council amends the urban renewal plan to actually add this acreage into the urban renewal district, you would not be able to spend any urban renewal money on this property. It's 100% outside the districts, you know, so all of those monies need to be spent within the boundaries of the urban renewal area.
Sure, and I don't think it would be prudent to expand this just in response to needing this kind of maintenance. Is it fair to also presume that the timeliness of adopting that into the district wouldn't work with the timeliness of needing this maintenance?
That is correct. I mean, I haven't run the numbers, but that's correct. I mean, by the time we do the public notice and, you know, the city holds its meeting, we would not be able to add it in, you know, and then after that secure the contract.
Sure, fair enough. Thank you, Brad.
Yep.
Rick?
Brad, I remember about a year ago, we took a tour of the pool and saw quite a bit of cracking and so forth inside the surface, as well as on the decking and so forth. And I might not have been listening. Would those cracks be filled in before they paint it? And would that be in their contract?
There is some sealant work that is included in it. You know, it's pretty basic. I mean, not going in and sort of, you know, chipping around and doing full repair work necessarily. I mean, it is a painting company, but so they're not a deep repairs, but there would be some sealant of some of those cracks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joel?
Well, Brad, I just wanted to confirm what I thought I heard from you, that the painting was because last year the paint chips clogged the water filters. Was that correct? Did I hear you say that?
That there was some clogging, yes.
And so, and I imagine that the pool then was closed because the water filters were clogged and they caused some additional expense.
Well, I don't think that I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think that we close. I mean, that's not a long-term fix. I mean, that it's just.
So basically, it wasn't for aesthetic reasons, though. It was for water quality and not to clog the filters. Was my understanding of what you presented.
Correct. Yeah, that's really the main driver. Yeah.
Valerie?
I just want clarification that what we are saying is that we could use part of the ARPA funding money because part of the problem comes about as a result of the closure in 2020 because of COVID. So we could use ARPA funding for this part of the project, even if we didn't use any ARPA funding if we use other funding to do or redo the pool. But this part of the repairs could be utilized by ARPA funding, am I correct?
Yeah, and I don't know if Adam is on tonight, but that's my understanding from the presentation that was made to you recently, that this is within that census tract that has low-income population, so it is within that. I think the census used a different term for this particular ARPA project, but right. Yeah, so it falls within that district of being eligible, and there is a connection to COVID because of the closure in 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Well, just to address the filter clogging with paint chips, is that something that could potentially just be resolved in the short term by having staff clean the filters more? Or just being aware and checking the filters more? Or is it something to where paint chips are like causing damage to systems?
Well, yes. I guess to the first question, I think to the staff, when we go and do the routine work to pull the pool covers off and do the maintenance, just check that and pull that out. If there is any additional chips, check the filters. I mean, so yes, it's just we think that for the 2 to 3 years, if you can go with that amount of time, that the pool would be open before we would get a new pool, or at least even start on one. That this would be a reasonable investment to make. Now, if it's just open for 1 year, I think, it's questionable. But if you look at a 2 to 3 year time period, that begins to stretch out those dollars and makes it a little bit more feasible, at least from staff's perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, thanks, Brad.
Yep.
Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this? All right, council discussion. Brian.
So I don't know what council's expectation is of the plan for the pool right now, but I was under the impression that this was kind of going to be the last year for Caveman Pool, and we're going to be like getting moving on the new pool. That's the direction we've given. So when I hear staff say 2 or 3 more years at this site, I'm like, that is not my expectation. My expectation is that this is the last year and we're getting that new pool built. So that might be something we need to discuss. Maybe my expectation's wrong, I don't know, but that's what I thought was happening. So under that assumption, putting $55,000 into a facility that would only be running for 1 year doesn't make sense to me. It's at the point where, it's degraded enough to let's just ride it till the wheels fall off kind of situation. So I don't know that I would be comfortable spending that kind of money to paint something that is pretty much totally deteriorated.
Further discussion? Valerie.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I do agree with you is that I really did think that the pool was coming much faster than it has. I will say that because I thought that we were pretty clearly on the, moving forward in getting and making a decision where it was going to be and what was going to happen, but obviously we're not. But I will say that seeing as this could be used for part of the ARPA funding, I think it's important that we have a pool for our kids. And I know that, you know, there could be chips floating around in there, and you talk about systems. Well, I'm not sure that I want my children or the children in our community physical system being, you know, taking in sealant or swimming pool chips. So I personally think that it is an expense that I would be willing to do to keep it going. I don't know, like I said, where we're moving. I can see that if we're moving this slow, that it may be 2 years before we get it up and going and moving forward. And part of that is because of lack of labor in those situations, which are kind of beyond our control. But I do think it's worth putting the money for our youth. I think especially if it does open up this year and kids, you know, are able to be outside and have that activity, I just think it's really important. So I would be willing to use ARPA funds to do it myself.
Further discussion. Rob?
Yeah, I think I pretty much totally agree with Valerie on all points. You know, I had hoped, I guess, like maybe the rest of us, that yes, in fact, this fall or this winter we'd be building a new pool. I'd have to say that I don't know that I've ever been pleasantly surprised at the speed at which our city is able to move on any project. So I would be it would be the first time I'd ever be pleasantly surprised if somehow, through some miracle, we actually built a pool between 22 and 23 season. With that being said, I would think that we're going to have this pool for at least 2 more years. It wouldn't even shock me if it was 3 more years, unfortunately. But for that reason, I think we probably should bite the bullet and make the investment on something that we're going to have for probably at least 2 years, maybe more. And I also agree with Valerie's statement about what we don't know and haven't quantified is any potential health risk to floating, you know, God knows what. I mean, we don't even know what age, you know, the paint or the sealants or anything else was used in there and what environmental standards were present, if any, when that thing was installed. So, you know, I don't know, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but we really don't know how much is floating and how much kids could ingest and all that kind of stuff. So I would definitely want to seal it, and because I think we're talking about at least 2 more years. And if ARPA money may make the most sense with that, yeah.
Brian?
I'm curious. Raise your hand if you went to Caveman Pool last year and you swam in the pool. All right, Joel and me. Good job, Joel. I didn't see you there. Yeah. Yeah. Did you see any paint chips in the water, and did you notice any issues like that?
So I leave all that to my wife because she changes things around, and I don't notice for 2 months. So they might have been there, but I didn't pay any attention.
That's fair. That's fair. I swam in that pool several times last year. It's an old pool, you know, the paint's not perfect. I didn't notice it wasn't enough for me to notice enough for it to be in front of us tonight. So I don't really know the scope of the issue exactly. But when I was there swimming, it seemed fine. I didn't notice, you know, paint chips floating in the water. So from the experience that I have at the pool last year, I am not going to vote to spend money to repaint it.
Kurt?
Brian, the reason the paint chips are there is because the pool was drained and it was exposed to the sun, and that led to deterioration. I agree with you I don't want to throw a bunch of money at something we're going to tear down, but as Rob says, we're going to use it for probably a couple more years. Let's have some pride in what we're doing, and I think we should go ahead and do the paint job.
DJ?
Yeah, I'm in support of this maintenance. So I move to approve the resolution authorizing city manager to enter into a contract with the Oregon Painting Company LLC to procure labor and materials to paint the Caveman pool basin and deck.
Second from Valerie, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Brian?
So this isn't specific to the motion, but I would like council, if apparently we need to reaffirm our dedication to getting this pool done because, you know, it's lingering with staff, and then I'm hearing councilors saying, well, I guess it's going to be 2 or 3 more years. If we tell staff to get it going in a year, they'll get it going in a year. We just need to tell them and to be consistent and persistent with them. So aside from the motion, I hope that we can do that and get the pool done.
Is it on the motion itself? Let's stick to the motion. Do you have discussion on the motion?
Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you. All right, DJ, you made the motion to approve the resolution. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian?
No.
All right, motion passes 7-1. And on the topic of getting the pool back on the agenda, we already said at the Monday workshop that we would do that, so we will do that. We need to decide what we're gonna do and affirm it and move on. All right. Where did we get to? I think we're on the Tourism Committee appointments. So what we have here is 6 vacancies on the Tourism Committee. And we have a number of applicants who have applied. We have 4 who have reapplied. Doug Bradley, Mandy Delvaglio, Bob Hochberg, Terry Hopkins have reapplied for the Tourism Committee. And then we have new applicants: Sue Dinsmore, Dylan Goodwin, Shane Hickman, Kevin Hopper, Jessica Lahane, and Tamara Martin. And I believe the Tourism Committee has some designations, right, for different, so this one's a little different than what we've done the past couple meetings, but as far...
It is on actually the green sheet, their recommendations.
Well, not just their recommendations, but that doesn't the Tourism Committee have a certain number of people that are supposed to represent different kinds of industry?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
They're looking it up. While they're looking it up, I will read the Tourism Committee recommendations are to reappoint the 4 members: Doug Bradley, Mandy Delvaglio, I think it might be Del Vaglio, Hochberg, and Terry Hopkins, and that the 2, hang on with your ballots, please, because we need to sort out an issue of something. 2 new people would be recommended: Kevin Hopper. The committee believes his professional position with Dutch Bros and that the company's connection to Grants Pass tourism activities will add value to the Tourism Advisory Committee. And then Tamara Martin, the committee believes she has excelled in her current role as Fairgrounds Director, and having her perspective, especially related to local events, will be an asset to tourism discussions. All right. Can we clarify whether those positions have specific designations?
Yes, and Julie just confirmed that the committee had this. So the wording is that this committee will include preferably A, 2 members representing lodging properties within the city of Grants Pass, and B, others representing river guides, area attractions, realtors, restaurants, media, marketing, and citizens at large.
Okay, so it's not really specified like 2 positions for any one thing. Okay. Any discussion, questions before we move forward with ballots, Valerie?
Yeah, I had a question. I thought, and we had talked about the fact that they had talked about adding more people from the county, but that would be above and beyond this 6, because 4 of these are simply renewals for the people that were already on there, correct?
That is correct, yes. They have talked about that, but I think that would be a separate recommendation coming from them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in that case, if each of you would circle or somehow mark your top 6 applicants along with your name at the bottom, pass it down this way, and let's reconvene at 8:05, and I will tally up the results during the recess.
Thank you for that. Okay.
to it, so it's just like I didn't know how it
All right.
should be worded, so I'm glad you guys had that.
Welcome back. First up, we're going to finish up our tourism committee appointments. So I tally the votes,
Oh, tell me that's easy.
and we had unanimous support for the 4 reapplying candidates: Doug Bradley, Mandy Del Valle, Barb Hushberg, and Terry Hopkins. We had 7 votes for Kevin Hopper. That was from Joel, DJ, Vanessa, Valerie, Brian, Rick, and Rob. 7 votes for Tamara Martin. That was Joel, DJ, Valerie, Brian, Kurt, Rick, and Rob. 1 vote for Sue Dinsmore from Vanessa, and 1 vote for Dylan Goodwin from Kurt. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Valerie.
I make a motion that we appoint the 4 current members, as well as Kevin Hopper and Tamara Martin, to the Tourism Committee.
Second from Rick, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Valerie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yep.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. And that brings us to public comment. And before I read the standard little thing here, I wanted just to note that we are allowing remote public comment via phone, but that if citizens want to provide public comment via phone, they need to contact the city recorder by noon on the day of the meeting, and that then they will be provided the password, the call-in phone number and password in order to participate remotely. So that said, we do not have anyone participating remotely this evening, but let me read the standard language for public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item for the council. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Let me be clear, 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not two individuals. At the conclusion of public comment, council will have an opportunity to respond. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. And I have a card from Stephen Nelson.
I don't know if I could speak for 3 months.
Thanks for not even trying. Thank God. Make sure that your microphone is on, Stephen.
Okay. I will speak about homelessness, a global issue and a local challenge for those who are homeless, and also for those who are trying to help alleviate the pains of those who are affected. This is complicated, for there are a lot of moving parts to a big problem. But I have to admit, I am appalled that the Biden administration of blatantly lawless and careless behavior dictated to the city how we are to utilize our city parks. Frankly, I despise and reject their ongoing behavior in Washington, D.C. That said, I will move on. And yet, in the midst of a serious local problem, we need to find a way to restore our city parks and at the same time to help the plight of homeless people. We need more projects like Foundry Village. There, the staff thoroughly screens the homeless applicants, and if accepted, They are required to abide by the rules of the village. Presently, city parks do not have rules, and recently the tent of a homeless person was intentionally set on fire. That is just one example. The Josephine County Fairgrounds is being phased out over time. Am I wrong in having said that? The parking was taken for the monstrosity, Flying Lark Casino, that's how I see it. And large fair gatherings are problematic without that parking lot. Also, a fourth bridge is planned for connecting with Allen Creek Road to cross the river. The intent of the city planners, I believe, is to develop that area so as to bring more tourism. But a big problem is this, the contrast of such development in the midst of increasing homelessness. We will continue to have the homelessness challenge, and we need to do right with the challenge. So, my proposal to the city is this. Utilize some of the fairgrounds acreage for a project similar to Foundry Village, but larger. One or more of the existing structures could be utilized for a cafeteria, warming center, and shower facilities. Let us do right to help them to not be homeless, as some lives can be restored. I will be willing to dialogue with any of you regarding this proposal. All you need to do is ask. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else who wanted to speak tonight? All right, Julie, did we get emails?
You received emails regarding the sheriff's proposal of a sales tax, obtaining municipal infrastructure grants, the old DMV building and its possibilities, Riverside Park suggestions, and Little League Baseball at Morrison Park.
Thank you. Council, did anyone want to comment on public comment tonight? Valerie?
I'm just going to respond for a moment to Steve in his comments about the fairgrounds. The fairground is actually owned by the county. So that is something that, there's at points we've actually asked them about opening it up. But that is not our decision because it is actually county property. So just so you know that's who you need to talk to. It is within the city, but it is actually county property. I want to double check on Morrison Park. It was my understanding that they did put padlocks on the dugouts so that there wasn't, thank you, Julie. So there wasn't a problem with that. And I don't know if there's any way, since it is spring season and there's a lot of kids there, to do anything about changing that Morrison Park for, that's why Reinhardt Park is protected, because of the youth activities. But I guess that was it's pretty much a blanket. We can't change it because we're using it. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comment? Okay, next up on the agenda, we have our consent agenda, which is items of such routine nature or without controversy that they may be approved with a single action. And Joel is going to read those to you.
Item A, the fee schedule for vehicle charging stations was addressed earlier this evening, so we don't need to include that. B, resolution authorizing the city managers to submit a regional grant application to the State Homeland Security Grant Program for barriers. C, motion approving the development code text amendments to Article 22, 23, 25, and 30, landscape-related amendments, findings of fact. And then D, E, and F are motions approving the minutes of the City Council and city committees. And with that, I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second from Valerie. And Joel, how do you vote on approving the consent agenda?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
All right, consent agenda passes. Matters from mayor, council, and staff. Council, do you have anything you would like to bring up this evening? Valerie.
I just do. I met last Friday with the subcommittee for the housing action plan. We're meeting with the state DLCD to Eco Northwest to come up with a strategic plan on how to meet our housing needs. And on April 15th, they are having a meeting and inviting people to come to that meeting to learn and give some ideas of what they'd like to see happen. So I think I'd like to invite anybody who's interested in housing development and has any ideas as to how to incentivize to get our housing built in our community. That would be a great meeting to attend, and I believe it's at 9 o'clock on April 15th here in the chambers.
Thank you. Anybody else? Rob?
So I think that council needs to discuss what, if anything, we're going to do with the Plaza Task Force. I can think, we did postpone any decision on G Street reconfiguration and things like that based on what the outcome of that Plaza Task Force was going to be. And now we don't know if we even have a job for them or if they can help us with any thoughts around that area. But I think we need to discuss it, I guess, at a workshop if we want it to continue and what we want what we need their help with.
On
So
that topic, well, I was hoping we could buy myself a couple more days before we talked about this, but I had a nice chat with Travis Boersma on Monday, and to try to figure out what happened there. He felt kind of left out of the loop, I guess, on what we were discussing doing with him, and he didn't realize that we'd made as much progress as we had. He said that no one had been in contact with him. So it was actually kind of a sad conversation, but nevertheless, I asked him to review the video from our discussion with Sarah Architects, and he was going to do that, but it's only been 2 days since I've spoken to him now, so I'm going to get back in touch with him in a couple days. So we'll see. It's just kind of at a pause position for the moment, but I'll let you know how that goes.
Moving forward, as your representative on that task force, I'll try to keep Travis in the loop more often. So I will do that. I will take on that responsibility.
Thank you. Any further discussion, or I guess items from council? No? Okay. Items from staff?
I have three. The first is on March 21st, we have scheduled urban campground contract. It'll be coming from legal, and we're needing to know if you'd like to have that in executive session. It's recommended from legal that we have that in executive session. If so, we would need to advertise that as such on the agenda.
Sorry, I missed that while I was about to sneeze. Brian?
I'm just curious under what category the exemption is for that.
Discussions with individuals responsible for real estate transactions.
Rick?
I would be in favor of having that in executive session.
Okay, I'm getting a yes from DJ. Brian?
So I'm just thinking out loud here, but I don't know that we're necessarily discussing a real estate transaction as much as we're discussing a grant to a third party. So I don't know how comfortable I am with that.
It's a grant with a third party to purchase real estate. And the council's going to have say in what real estate is picked, where it's going to be picked, and the parameters by which it's to be picked.
Brian?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Valerie?
I was just going to say, if I'm going to support our
Mark
legal
Seligman.
and say that if he feels it's
Is now exiting.
that we should do that, I'll go with the recommendation of our lawyer. with Augustus, that it go in executive session.
All right, so I'm catching up. We're talking about the grant language for this potential grant for the urban campground. I mean, I guess my expectation was at this point, we're not actually talking about a specific dollar amount or any particular property, but just kind of hammering out the general idea of the deal, I guess. Is that, and that to me would not be an executive session item, but.
The money hasn't been figured out. We don't know whether it's coming from ARPA or whether it's coming from state funds. We haven't determined how much is to be spent from ARPA. We haven't determined or finalized what the parameters of the real estate to be purchased are to be. There are multiple issues with ARPA in terms of reporting that I feel the council needs to be aware of. And because the council is going to have such a hand in picking the real estate essentially with the third party, I believe that it would be a better discussion to have in an executive session.
Rob?
In some ways, I would really, it would be a lot easier, we'll say, to be an executive session. I can't think of anything that City Attorney just said that actually should be an executive session. Not a single thing. Every one of those, whether it's the dollar amount, whether it's the specific, the specifics of the agreement, all those things, they are not a real estate transaction. That's just a contract with an outside, third party, whether or not we want to contract with them for some future service. But we're not specifically talking about a real estate transaction. We're not talking about a personnel matter. We're talking about a contract for a potential service down the line. To me, while it's easy to have an executive session, I haven't heard anything that to me sounds like it should be an executive session.
Joel?
I'm a little bit conflicted by it. The one thing that does have to do with the real estate transaction is the dollar amount, and if you say you have $1 million to purchase property, or you have $500,000 to purchase property,
Yeah.
and you go to a property and it's appraised at below that, it could be not advantageous to the city or the nonprofit to do that, and to have a fair market transaction rather than the council, they know that this much money is available, so that's what they would want as their selling price.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that would happen, but people are people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a specific property or on the table with All Care Foundation at this time?
That I'm aware of, but I did believe that the council wanted to have discussions about the parameters of the real estate. And to be clear, the statute says that an executive session is allowable to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real estate transactions. We're essentially, if you're looking at the contracts you're going to look at are going to deliver monies to a third party to purchase a piece of real estate that the council has to approve. So that is my rationale for putting it into an executive session. Of course, it is at council's discretion.
Thank you. DJ?
To put it plainly, I agree with legal counsel's rationale. And without prevaricating too much, what is the standard procedure for approving executive session? Is it a majority of council? Is it 3 councilors? Somebody can answer that question for me.
It is at the purview of the council, so I think theoretically a majority of the council. And Aaron and Augustus are agreeing. Brian? Wait, first, are you done, DJ?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Brian, then Rob.
So I think maybe the distinction here is that the executive session, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the executive session, for it to be a real estate transaction, has to be a discussion of real property, which would essentially mean a specific property. And I don't know that that is what we would be discussing. So is that, am I reading that right, or?
One reading of the statute.
Rob, then Valerie.
Yeah, I think I would appreciate the point that Joel made, and I think from a practical matter, I would probably, I'd probably agree with Joel's point, and I appreciate Augustus' opinion, and it's to me it could go either way, I guess, in my mind. But I guess I appreciate Joel's position is that we would be wise to not be talking about specific dollar figures in a public meeting. It can't benefit the city, and it is a borderline call, I guess, whether or not it could be an executive session based on what Augustus just mentioned. I'd be in favor of it doing it in an executive session.
All right, is there any burning comment before I just take a poll of where we're at on this? All right, so Rick, the question is, do you want to have this discussion in executive session?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Joel?
Oh, I'm torn, but yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And Brian?
No.
DJ?
Yes.
All right, looks like we will have it in executive session. I'm just going to state for the record that I don't agree with that decision. Anything further from staff tonight?
Yeah, we have, just for council's consideration, Steve Vincent with the Vista. He's the rep for our region. He made a request that the council consider placing him on the climate task force. He is interested in energy conservation and would hope that council would consider that. So I was bringing that, I told him I'd bring that forward, his request forward to you for consideration. And then the other thing is it's a colleague appreciation week, and we're appreciating all of our colleagues and all that they do to help build community with your direction. And I just wanted to point out one individual. There's so many to point out, but just the one behind me, our public works director, has a pin on his lapel there, and I think it probably says 25 years. I think he's been here for 26 years, and so that's a great commitment. So thank you very much for your commitment and service to the city.
I did have 3 quick updates on park projects. You are getting a memo that will have the more comprehensive update on all of the active park projects. There's actually a number of them, but 3 in particular. So this week, the Loveless B Street jumps. As you know, the city committed $10,000 to match the $15,000 that was raised by grants through Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association. So there were some logs that were dumped out there this week. You probably see those. That's going to be part of the features. And we expect the earthworks, the contractor, to start making those improvements out there within 2 to 3 weeks. The other big one is the court resurfacing project, another contract that the council approved last year. That involves 9 different parks and resurfacing, putting acrylic surface on those. Pickleball is where we're starting. They actually started this week putting pickleball posts in some of those locations where we're going to have new pickleball facilities, courts. Reinhardt is going to be starting April 4th with its full closure. That's going to take the longest. That's an 18-day project that they're going to be working on Reinhardt. That's converting several tennis courts and basketball to pickleball. And then we go from there. Westholm, Redwood, Morrison, Gilbert Creek, and then Eckstein. So basically from April 4th to May 13th, all of those parks are going to have a series of closures and/or fencing and signage that lets the community know that they're going to be closed for X amount of time. Like I said, Reinhardt's the longest one, that's 18 days. The others are, 5, 6, 7 days. Some of them are only 2 days. So we're excited about that. We finally got on Benion's list. We're the first this year. And then the last one I had is the skate park. And I wanted to actually have some photos, if the council's interested, to see a little more clarity. I know there's been some conversation about what exactly is happening with the skate park. We do have an RFP, or I shouldn't say an RFP, it's a bid announcement that's out for repairs on that. So if you'd like, I can show you a couple pictures to clarify what exactly Thornton Engineering did in preparing those bid documents, or I can, just verbally show you. It's up to you.
Sure, go ahead and show us.
I don't know if you had anybody else.
While he's getting ready, I just wanted to thank you all for the work on the electric vehicle charging station. It was very much appreciated, and remind you that we're having the open house. And Councilor DeLagrange, if you want to bring your car down and get it charged, that would be awesome. On Monday, we'll be ready to go at 11 o'clock, just before the workshop.
That's at the Welcome Center one, right?
Yes, at the Welcome Center.
Okay, great.
So on the skate park, what's on the screen behind me is the drawing that Thornton Engineer, the city's contract engineer, prepared. There's a legend that is associated with all of these. So they are, basically the project is to go in and sandblast all 22,000 square feet of this facility. There are a number of trouble spots that you see called out here. Some of them relate to drains. Some of them relate to repairing some concrete features. There's several rails that are out there where you can see, maybe you can't see too well on here, but a half-inch dip or 3/4 to an inch. There's some of these rails are kind of coming apart from the concrete there. This is the sidewalk around the edge of the skate park, which has a lift on it that's going to be repaired. Here's a zoom in on a portion that's within one of the bowls, where there's some rough spots that needs to be, again, cleaned up and put some new concrete down there. Some of these rails are breaking apart a little bit from the concrete walls. Here's just another zoom in where you have, a lift on where some of those rails are at. So just going back to the master plan here, the purpose really was to address, these as from a safety perspective, and to get them repaired and cleaned up. It will have, after the sandblasting and after some of those repairs are done, those spot repairs, a sealant put over the entire facility, all the basins, all of it, and that will kind of create that more uniform look and a more smooth surface. So that's what is out there. We know from the Parks Advisory Committee a couple of years ago there has been some discussions about more significant upgrades. It's a big park, 22,000 square feet, and so in terms of any type of removal of the surface that's there, we're anticipating much more significant dollar figure than what this project is. So we are a little bit uncertain in terms of who's going to actually respond to the bid opening. It's pretty, kind of fairly unique work with the surfacing and smoothing it out and but it's a pretty detailed bid. It's got the product types that we're looking for and all that in it. So that's where we're at, and I just wanted to see, I understand there might be some, maybe some other expectations out there.
Looks like Rick has a question.
So does the bid have a timeline when it would have to be done, and does it take like a month or 2 months to do it? Would shut down the park, and would it affect the use of the park, of course, depending on the season?
So yes, to your last question, it would definitely shut down the park, for that period. We don't know until really we get the bids in terms of, what those contractors are saying, but.
Is that question out there to them, what their timeline would be and how fast they could do it?
It is. I don't know if Jason, have you been? Yeah, he's saying no, he hasn't seen it. We're community development's in partnership with Public Works on this project in terms of they're managing the actual bid opening. But that typically is, well, it will be in terms of the bid responses, a requirement, so they will need to do this. So we'll, have much more detail for the council after we receive those in 3 to 4 weeks.
Any other questions? Rob?
So, not on this, but you mentioned the repaving, resurfacing of the other parks. I didn't hear you mention Lawn Ridge. Did you mention Lawn Ridge? Because the basketball court was supposed to be done there, and the tennis court was going to be converted to pickleball, and I didn't hear you mention Lawn Ridge.
Oh, I didn't. It is part of the
Okay.
resurfacing. I'm sorry if I didn't mention it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian?
So I have 2 questions. The first one is, when this goes out, or maybe it's already gone out, is it just kind of a general, like it's being thrown out there? Are we sending it to companies that might specialize in this work? I know there's companies that do specialize in this work. Are we going to be directly soliciting them for this?
If we know of companies, we can definitely do that. I'm going to need to touch base with Wade to know if we have those companies. I don't know myself if we do or not. We definitely are putting it in our standard bid opening locations, including the journal, Daily Journal of Commerce. Thank you. So that's typically captures the contracting audience because of its readership.
There's 2 or 3 major contractors, firms that actually build the skate parks, and we can send out the bid document to them to see if it catch interest, to make sure that they get it also.
Okay, I think that would be wise. And also, just for clarity, I know we had a discussion about the scope of the project and refinishing explicitly being called out, a refinishing of the surface. And it sounds like that might not be explicitly called out in what we're putting out. You said sandblasting, you said pressure washing, and you said sealing. To my knowledge, none of those 3 things smooth the surface. From what I know of sandblasting, it would potentially make the surface even a little rougher. And then a sealant is not a filler, it is just kind of a top coat. So Parks Committee and the park users and everyone that's been involved on getting this RFP or this bid to this point was under the assumption that a refinishing of the surface to a smoother, more new surface would be part of the scope. And that's important because the park is over 20 years old and the concrete is not as smooth as it used to be. And so that's a concern, not just among me, but people I've talked to on Parks Committee have had the expectation that was part of the scope too. Yeah, and we may have a terminology or definitional issue here. So are you saying that your expectation and some of the Parks Committee members that you've talked to is that it would be completely resurfaced, as in taken up from what's there and then resurfaced? Or I guess I'm trying to get a clarity on what the expectation is. Well, I'm not in the construction business, so I don't totally know. I'm not envisioning concrete getting torn out or anything, but I know that skate parks have a standard of the surface should be this level of smoothness, and I know that our park is not at that level right now. So as part of the scope of the refurbishment, everyone was under the assumption that getting the surface back up to spec was part of that scope, and how that happens, I don't personally know.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, well, I know that Miles with Thornton Engineering spent quite a bit of time looking into the standards for the industry. I did leave him a voicemail yesterday and today. We haven't been able to connect, but I will definitely do that and ensure that what is in the bid documents, achieves what that industry standard is, unless it's something significantly different than, what I hear you saying. We'll keep the council up to date on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brad? All right.
Thank you.
We're going to have lots of park maintenance action in the next couple months, so I know everybody's going to love having those new court surfaces.
Yeah. Good job getting those things going. Yeah, that's great.
Any other comments from staff? No?
Mayor, this is Adam.
Hey, go ahead, Adam.
I just wanted to ask council for some clarification on guidance for Monday's presentation. This will be the first time we've had this type of LB capital project prioritization conversation at this stage of the budget process. My thought was, we have 59 total LB projects to get through, 12 of which are closed, 26 of which are set to be receiving no new funding in the fiscal year, which leaves just 21 receiving new funding. And my current plan was to do a summary of all of the projects by funding source so that you could see where's all the lodging tax dollars going, where's all of the gas tax going, and then kind of do a process of elimination of these are the closing projects, but not go into a lot of detail on those, and do something similar for those projects not receiving any new funding, but then do go into detail on the projects that are slated to receive new funding in FY23. And then, of course, if any additional information is needed on those other items, I could always bring back that information at the second meeting. So that's my current plan, but I just wanted to make sure that we were meeting the expectations of council for this workshop on Monday.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. Council, do you have any other topics you wanted him to address on Monday, or does it sound like he's on the right path there? Go ahead, Brian.
I think part of the discussion is going to revolve potentially around reallocating funds that are already in projects. And those may or may not be projects that are getting additional funding in the new budget year. So as long as there's still, enough detail and opportunity to discuss existing allocations, then that sounds great.
Okay. Anything further? Does that work for you, Adam?
It does. I'll go ahead and include all of the open projects. I just wanted to let everybody know that will be 47 projects, and it'll be a rather large presentation.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all we have next Monday, right? Okay. Anything further from staff?
What does that mean, no?
No. Okay, we still have an executive session if somebody would like to adjourn us into executive session.
I move that we adjourn to executive session.
Thank you. Second from Brian. All in favor of adjourning into executive session?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let me find my reading material here.